The last Friday of every month, I stayed late at the hospital. Not because I had to, not because anyone asked me to, but because that was the day I reviewed my personal accounts, the mortgage payment confirmation, the property tax auto draft, the homeowner's insurance premium, all lined up in my banking app like a quiet record of everything I'd been carrying alone for the past 4 years. I'd sit in the break room after my shift ended, still in my scrubs, a cold cup of coffee next to my laptop, and I'd go through each line item, not out of anxiety, out of habit. Because when you're the one holding everything together, you learn to keep receipts. I'm a registered nurse. I've been one for 6 years, and for the last 4 of those years, I've also been a homeowner. Technically, legally, on paper in a way that is absolutely binding and not up for interpretation. My family just seemed to forget that part. It started with a dinner. My younger brother, I'll call him what he was, the favorite, the one who never had to try, had just gotten a promotion at the marketing firm where he'd worked for 8 months. 8 months. My parents acted like he'd been named CEO of a Fortune 500 company. My mother called me at 6 in the morning to tell me I was coming off a 12-hour night shift. I had been on my feet since 7 the previous evening. I had held a patient's hand at 3 a.m. while she was scared, and I had charted vitals for 6 people, and I had not sat down for longer than 4 minutes at a stretch. "We're doing a celebration dinner Saturday," my mother said. "La Maison. 7 o'clock. Don't be late." La Maison was the kind of restaurant where the bread cost $9 and the entrees didn't have prices on the menu. The kind of place my parents would not have been able to set foot in 3 years ago. I knew who was paying for that dinner, before she even finished the sentence. I went because that's what I did. I showed up. I always showed up. I should back up. 3.5 years before that dinner, my parents had been 4 months away from losing the house I grew up in. My father had co-signed a business loan from my uncle, a decision made with a handshake and a sense of family loyalty that my uncle did not share. And when that business collapsed, my father was left holding a debt that swallowed our family savings inside of 18 months. The house went into default. My parents were making minimum payments on the mortgage and nothing else. The notices were stacking up. I had been out of nursing school for 2 years at that point. I had student loans of my own. I had a small apartment and a car payment, and I was doing okay, not great, but okay. I had also spent 2 years watching my parents slowly fall apart under the weight of something that wasn't entirely their fault, and I could not keep watching. I sat down with a housing attorney. I ran the numbers 4 different ways. I talked to my bank, and then I made an offer to my parents. I would buy the house from them. Not take it, not assume the loan. Buy it, properly, with the deed transferred to my name, the mortgage in my name, everything legal and documented. They would continue living there. My brother, who was 22 and between jobs for the 3rd time that year, would continue living there. I would move back into my old room and pay off the debt they'd accumulated and carry the mortgage going forward. My parents cried. My mother hugged me for a long time. My father said he would pay me back. He never did, and I never expected him to. That wasn't the point. I hired the attorney. I paid the closing costs. I signed the paperwork. The deed was transferred into my name on a Tuesday in November, and I remember sitting in the attorney's office afterward and feeling both proud and terrified in equal measure. I moved back into my childhood bedroom. I set up automatic payments for the mortgage, the property taxes, the homeowner's insurance. I contributed to groceries. I fixed the water heater when it broke. I replaced the gutters. My brother, during this same period, left and came back twice, dated someone briefly, took a bartending certification he never used, and eventually landed the marketing job. 8 months later, my mother was calling me at 6 in the morning to celebrate him. I got to La Maison at 6:58. My mother, father, brother, and his girlfriend were already seated. There was champagne on the table. The good kind, not the kind from the grocery store, and my brother was leaning back in his chair like the restaurant had been built specifically for him. "There she is," my mother said when she saw me, in the tone she used when she was performing warmth for an audience. I sat down. I smiled. I ordered the salmon because it was the least expensive thing on the menu that I could eat without feeling like I was punishing myself. The dinner was fine. My brother talked about his new title, Senior Account Associate, which, I later looked up, typically pays between $52,000 and $60,000 a year in the city. My mother talked about how proud she was. My father nodded along. His girlfriend laughed at everything my brother said. I ate my salmon and refilled my water glass and waited for the part I could feel coming. It came with dessert. My mother set down her fork and looked at me with the specific expression she wore when she'd already made a decision and was now informing me of it. "We've been thinking," she said, "about the room situation." I looked at her. "Your brother and Tiffany are getting serious. He needs more space. Your room is bigger, and it has the attached bath." She smiled like this was perfectly reasonable, like she was discussing a minor scheduling adjustment. "We thought you could take the smaller room down the hall. It'll still be your own space." I sat with that for a moment. My room. The room I had slept in since I was 7 years old. The room I had moved back into 3 years ago as part of an arrangement that involved me purchasing the property those rooms existed within. She wanted me to give it to my brother and his girlfriend of, by my estimate, 5 months. "We figured you'd understand," my brother said. He didn't look at me when he said it. He was looking at Tiffany. "You're barely home anyway, shifts and stuff." My mother nodded. "It just makes sense practically. And honestly, honey, at your age, maybe you should start thinking about getting your own place anyway." Branching out a little. At my age, I was 31. I picked up my water glass, I took a slow sip. I set it down. "Okay," I said. "We can talk about it at home." My mother looked satisfied. My brother looked relieved. Tiffany smiled politely. My father looked relieved. Tiffany smiled politely. My father looked at his creme brulee. I drove home alone. I did not say anything else about it that night. What I did that night when I got home was sit at my desk and open the folder on my laptop where I keep scanned copies of every important document related to the house. The deed, the mortgage statements, the title insurance, the property tax records, all in my name, the original purchase agreement, the attorney's closing summary with the transfer date highlighted. I read through them slowly, not because I needed to remind myself of their contents, but because I needed to feel the weight of what they represented. 4 years of payments, 4 years of maintenance, 4 years of being the reason this family still had a roof. I thought about what my mother had said. "At your age, maybe you should start thinking about getting your own place." I was already in my own place. I owned it. I closed the laptop. I set an alarm for my shift the next morning. I went to sleep. I did not go looking for a smaller room. The following week, I came home on a Tuesday to find 2 men I didn't recognize standing in the hallway outside my bedroom door. One of them had a paint roller. The other was holding color swatches. My mother was standing with them, pointing at the wall trim. "What is this?" I said. She turned around. "Oh, you're home early. We're just getting a feel for colors. Your brother and Tiffany want something more modern. Maybe a sage green or, who authorized this?" She blinked. "What do you mean? We're just looking." "These men are in my house," I said. "I didn't authorize anyone to come into my house." The 2 painters looked at each other. My mother's expression shifted from cheerful to something tighter. "It's the family home," she said. "Don't be dramatic." I looked at the men. I said politely and clearly, "Thank you for coming, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave. There's been a miscommunication about the authorization for this job." They left. They were professionals. They understood immediately that something was off. My mother was less professional. "That was incredibly rude," she said. "They drove all the way out here. I've been planning this." "You plan to have painters come into my home without asking me," I said. "Your home." She said it the way people say something when they think you're being ridiculous, like the words themselves were absurd. "Yes," I said. "My home. My name is on the deed. I pay the mortgage every month. It is legally actually my home." She stared at me. "I don't know why you're acting like this," she said finally. "Your brother just needs a little support right now. He's building something. You have a stable career. You can afford to be flexible." "I'm not being inflexible," I said. "I'm telling you that you cannot make decisions about this property without my consent. That's not an opinion, that's the law." She walked away. She went into the kitchen and started running water loudly, which was what she did when she didn't want to continue a conversation. That night, I called my attorney. My attorney, who I'd worked with since the original purchase, was not surprised by what I described. She said what I already knew. I had full legal authority over the property, and no occupant had the right to make modifications or reassign rooms without my consent. She drafted a letter. Formal, factual, not aggressive, just clear. It outlined the ownership structure, reminded all occupants that any changes to the property required the owner's written approval, and noted that the owner reserved the right to initiate formal tenancy procedures if necessary. I had it sent to the house, to all three of them, officially, by certified mail the following week. My brother called me before the letters even arrived. He must have found out from my mother. "Are you seriously lawyering up on your own family?" he said. "I'm clarifying the legal situation," I said, "since it seems to have been forgotten. You act like we're strangers. We're your family. Mom and Dad sacrificed everything for you." I didn't say what I wanted to say, which was, I know exactly what was sacrificed and by whom, and I have the mortgage statements to prove it. What I said was, I love this family, and I also own this house. Both of those things are true, and one of them doesn't cancel out the other. He hung up. The letters arrived on a Thursday. I was at work. I found out about the reaction secondhand from my father, who texted me a simple message. "Can we talk when you get home?" When I got home that evening, my mother was in the living room. My brother and Tiffany were not there. They'd apparently gone out. My father was sitting in his usual chair, and for the first time in a long time, he looked like he was actually present in the conversation rather than deferring to my mother. "Sit down," he said. I sat. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I sat. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I forgot." I looked at him. I mean, I didn't forget, exactly. I knew. But I think we let ourselves stop thinking about it, like it stopped being real. He rubbed the back of his neck. "That's not an excuse." "No," I said. "It's not. Your mother is upset. I know, she feels like you went around her. Like you didn't come to her first." I considered how to say what I needed to say. "Dad, I tried to come to her first. She walked away. She was already scheduling painters. Someone had to make the situation clear." He nodded slowly. He looked tired. Not angry tired, just tired. "I'm sorry," he said, for letting it get to this." That landed somewhere in my chest. My father had never been good at apologies. He didn't make them casually. When he said the words, he meant them. "I'm not trying to punish anyone," I said. "I just need it to be understood. I can't have people making decisions about my property like I'm not here." "I know," he said. "I know that now." My mother came in from the kitchen about 20 minutes later. She sat down across from me. She didn't apologize. Not exactly. That wasn't her way, and I had stopped expecting it to be. But she said, "I didn't think about how it would feel to you. I just saw a solution. It wasn't everything I needed, but it was something, and from her, something was a lot. I'm not moving rooms," I said clearly. "I need you to understand that." She looked at her hands. Then she nodded. My brother was a different conversation. He came home late that night and knocked on my door. I opened it. He was standing in the hallway in his jacket, like he hadn't fully decided whether he was staying or leaving. "I didn't know," he said, "about the deed. About all of it. Mom just always called it the family house." "It is the family house," I said. "You all live here, but I own it. Why didn't you ever tell me?" I thought about that honestly. Because I didn't want it to be something that divided us. I wanted it to just be normal. I wanted to take care of the family without making it weird. But it became weird anyway. "It became weird because you tried to take my room without asking," I said. "That's where it became weird." He didn't have a good answer for that. He stood there for a moment, and then he said, "I don't know how to be in debt to you." "You're not in debt to me," I said. "I didn't do it for repayment. I did it because you were my family and you needed help. But help doesn't mean I disappear. It doesn't mean my name stops being on the deed." He left without saying much else. That was okay. Some things need time to settle before they can be said properly. In the months after that, things changed gradually. Not dramatically. No movie moment, no tearful group hug in the kitchen. Just slowly, incrementally, the balance of the house shifted into something more honest. My mother stopped making decisions about the property without checking with me first. It was a small thing, but it was everything. She'd say, "I was thinking about getting someone to look at the back fence. Is that okay?" And I'd say yes. Or I'd say, "Let me look at the budget first," and she'd wait. That's all I had ever needed. Just to be asked. My brother moved Tiffany unofficially into his room, his actual room, about 4 months later. They bought a bed frame together and a rug. My mother helped them pick out curtains. It was fine. It was actually fine. He and I have a different relationship now. Not close. Not the way siblings on TV are close. But honest. He knows what I did. He knows what it cost. And I think underneath the embarrassment of finding that out the way he did, there is something that functions like gratitude, even if he doesn't know how to say it out loud. My father checks in with me about the house stuff now. He asks about the mortgage, about the taxes. He started paying for groceries most weeks without being asked. It's his way. And me. I still sit in the break room on the last Friday of every month reviewing the accounts. The mortgage confirmation, the tax draft, the insurance premium. I still go through each line. But now, when I close the laptop and drive home, I walk through the front door without that low-level hum of resentment that I'd been carrying so long I'd stopped noticing it. It's my house. Everyone in it knows it now. That's all I ever needed. I've thought a lot about what the turning point really was. Not the letter from my attorney. Not the painters standing in my hallway. Not even the dinner where my mother smiled and told me to give away what was mine. The real turning point was years earlier, when I decided to do something hard and do it quietly. When I sat with an attorney, ran the numbers, signed the paperwork, and moved back into my childhood bedroom without asking for recognition in return. I thought that was the right way to love people. Maybe it was, but somewhere along the way, doing it quietly became allowing people to forget. That's not a character flaw in my family, it's cause and effect. When you absorb every cost without complaint, when you carry every burden without naming it, people stop seeing the weight. They start seeing the carrying as just you, just who you are, just what you do. And eventually, they stop seeing it at all. I had to learn that protecting people and protecting myself were not opposites. That saying "this is mine" was not a betrayal of love. That boundaries are not walls. They're the thing that makes it possible to keep the door open. My father understood first. He said, "I forgot." 2 words. But he meant them, and that mattered. He had let the years of normal blur into something that stopped being honest, and when it was made clear, he sat with that and accepted it. That's what integrity actually looks like in a real person, not never making the mistake, but being willing to see it when it's named. My mother came around differently, in her way. She didn't apologize with words. She started asking first, "Is it okay if?" That was her apology, and I took it. My brother, I think he's still working through it. There's something uncomfortable about finding out that the person you took for granted was quietly holding the floor under your feet. It doesn't make him a bad person. It makes him someone who has to grow, and that growth is his to do. What I know now is this. Intelligence without honesty is just cleverness. Strength without boundaries is just endurance. And caring for people who don't understand the cost of what you give them isn't noble. It's a slow erosion of yourself. Real love, the kind worth having, requires honesty in both directions. It requires people knowing what they're receiving and being willing to acknowledge it. I worked 12-hour shifts. I skipped things I wanted. I signed documents and made payments and showed up, every single time, for people who had started to see all of that as inevitable. As background. As mine to give without being asked. It was mine to give, but it was also mine to stop giving if the terms changed without my consent. That's not bitterness. That's just finally understanding what it means to be both a generous person and a person who knows her own worth. Those 2 things are not in conflict. They never were. I just had to learn to hold them at the same time. The house is still standing. So is the family. And now, finally, both of those things are built on something true.